Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to Lake Liberty, where today we're going to be building our first modern coaster, the Cobra. We'll also be discussing Update 1 and the new DLC. Let's go! In the last episode, we built 5 new flat rides for the park, and this side of Lake Liberty is looking very full now. Very happy with how it's shaping up, but this side is looking distinctly empty. So today, we're going to be building a modern coaster to fill it. The coaster is going to be very loosely based on a coaster at Lake Compounce called Zoomerang. And in order to do it, we need to do some more research because we need some better chain lift coasters, namely the looping by Dark Kinetics, which is quite some way down the research tree, but luckily we still have enough points to get it. So we're going to go in and do the research that we need so we can get this coaster. This is going to allow us to do some much more advanced things than we did with the Giant Dipper. The looping is the one in the top right of the picture, so we will research that. And here we go. A coaster which likes to loop and invert, gives us lots of 90-degree possibilities. And the vibe I want to go for with this coaster is that from an overview of the park and from far away, it fits in with the red, white and blue, quite traditional US colour scheme that we've got going on here. But up close, it's got a really 1980s vibe, going for a kind of Knight Rider feel for this. The lift hill is 35 metres, so I've just measured that out with some more pieces here, and then we're going to get the chain lift up there, and then it's going to come straight round here and then straight back down again. The original coaster actually runs backwards all the way around the track and then forwards around it, which is not something we can do with this particular coaster. There are some more advanced coasters in the game, like vertical lifts and things like that, but they are way down at the bottom of the research tree, and in this little park, we're not going to be getting to that stage, but we're going to be doing some much more advanced coasters in future videos on the channel. Apologies for the state of my voice, by the way. Picked up a cold on my little holiday in Cambodia last week, so hopefully it's not too bad to listen to. We're going to be using some of the special track pieces in this coaster for the first time, starting with this loop. It's a pretty simple loop which just goes out to the right so that it avoids the station. And then we're going to join it up to a Cobra Roll, which is where the coaster gets its name from. This is way too close to the station. I'll move this back in a minute. I'm just experimenting with it here. But this is a really cool feature, and this is the thing that I sort of caught my eye when I was doing my research, and is why I decided to use this coaster. It's a really cool double roll, almost like a helix at the end of the track. So we're going to do some adjustments to make sure that we've got enough space to get out there, and then do the Cobra Roll and then come back. I still think it's too close to the station, really. Whenever I tried making the track longer, the cars didn't have enough momentum to get around it. Not sure why that is. Let me know in the comments if you know more about it than me. The lift hill is definitely the same size as the real coaster, and I've got all the drives and chains and everything going at full speed, so I'm not sure why I wouldn't get around it if it was any longer. But this still looks pretty cool. Most of it's floating in midair at the moment because we've got paths underneath it, which means the supports don't draw in. So we're just going to delete those paths. We're going to do something much more interesting with that a bit later on anyway. As we delete the paths, the supports start to draw themselves in automatically. But you can see at the top of the chain lift here, there's still a couple of them missing, and that's because it's a bit too close to the path, which means we can do one of my favourite things in Planet Coaster 2, which is just move the whole thing with one click, which is something I would love to be able to do in Planet Zoo. So we'll just shift it over to the left a bit, get it centered, and now we can get all the supports in and start making it look like a real coaster. You may notice that the carousel is on fire. I did the schoolboy error last episode of adding 5 new rides into the park and not employing any new mechanics to look after them, so we'll fix that in a second. What we're going to do now is just start covering up these paths with some plaster pieces so that everything looks nice and seamless, and then we'll start customizing the ride itself and getting the colour scheme the way we want it. So we're going to go with red and white for the tracks, and then for the cars we're going to go in and make them black with some red highlights and get that Knight Rider feel I was talking about coming in, and then we're going to start customizing the cars themselves. The cars have already got a really 80s feel to them, so we don't need to do too much work on them. What we're going to do is put in one of the null signs here and get the name of the ride on there. So I'll just put Cobra, get a nice font in, get that down to the right size, and then we'll just put the above it, make it a bit smaller. These null signs are so good, can't live without them now. They are really useful for anything like this. You'll notice the cars themselves aren't actually black, they're more like a really dark grey, probably because they're shiny. So we'll change the colours on the text as well to get that to a dark grey rather than black, just so that really sits in and looks like it's part of the car, rather than just a sign that's been stuck on there. And then we're going to just add some little details to the front using these anchor attachments. Use the mirror tool, and then maybe get another couple of those on there just so they're a bit more visible. There we go, and that's the cars pretty much done. Really like how they look, but I'm not completely happy with the supports on the coaster, so let's sort those out. I felt like the game, on this coaster at least, adds way too many supports in, so I just went in and selected alternate parts of the track and turned supports off on those ones, so we get half the amount of supports that we had originally. And at this end by the Cobra Roll, because of the paths in there, and I still want there to be paths there so people can get past it, it's not drawing the supports in. The real ride has 4, with 2 of them being doubles on the real ride, so we're going to go in and make our own custom supports. So we've got the support pieces that are pretty similar to the default ones that come with the coaster anyway, so we'll just make one that's in the right size in relation to all the other pieces, and then we can get the colours right, and then we'll group that together, and we've got our own little support that we can use. So confirm that selection, group the scenery, and then we've got something that matches pretty closely with the supports on the coaster itself, and then we can just go in and scale each piece to exactly match these supports, and then add in a few more pieces to make it taller, and then we'll end up with our own support that we can put in at the top of the Cobra Roll to make it look more like it's being supported. There you go. The ones on the real coaster are slanted like this, so they go, one goes to the right and forward, and one goes to the left and forward, and you just have 2 of them next to each other, and that's what holds up the end of the roll. And while we finish that off, let's talk about the new update and DLC. So I'm recording this on Wednesday night, so I know what's in them, but I haven't actually seen them yet. You guys might have seen them by now. There's a few features that I'm really looking forward to. The more realistic movement on the flumes is going to make those a lot more fun to use, and the ability to attach scenery to tracked and transport rides is going to be really cool. I've avoided using those really because I want to be able to customize them, so it's going to be a lot of fun getting into those. And finally getting glass pieces along with more coaster supports and fireworks is going to be really good as well. I'm really hoping they fix the staff, or the mechanics in particular, who are just absolutely useless at fixing the rides at the moment. Hopefully if they work better, then I can spend more time building and less time mucking around with mechanics. As for the DLC, some of the tracked rides look really cool. There's a couple in there which are the same as rides in Belmont Park and Luna Park and Lake Compounce, which are the parks that this is based on. So we're definitely going to be getting one of the new flat rides into Lake Liberty in the next episode. Alright, I've just added a load of fences in using the path tool to keep guests away from the track. And now we need to get the entrance and the exit sorted. So we're putting a queue path here, getting a lot better at making these quickly. We'll join that up to the main body of path, do a bit more tidying up on that later, but now let's make a sign for the ride. So using a few of the signs, and then as usual using the null signs to get the actual text on there rather than using the text on the signs, so we get more flexibility. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any future episodes of these series. And speaking of series, Belmont Zoo will be returning very shortly. I'm hoping to have a new episode out on Wednesday next week. Got a really cool build inspired by one I saw recently using one of the new features from the Zookeeper's Animal Pack. Now, we'll introduce a 4th colour into the colour scheme for this, a nice sort of goldy yellow for the text. And then we're going to use the 3D text trick that we used on the other side of the park in the lake side of the park to make it look 3-dimensional, and we'll also put a border around it as well. So firstly we'll copy it behind itself with a darker colour, get a few of those in to fully surround each of the letters, and then we will select the middle letters and just copy those in front of each other a few times until we've got a nice 3-dimensional look to it. Then we can put some stands in. I'm just using, I think these are coaster supports actually, but when you shrink them down, do a really nice job of that. Make sure these are in the right place with the 2 signs that we got joined together. Move the middle bit up, and there we go. We've got ourselves a sign for the ride, and we can start decorating the ride itself. I was going through the pieces trying to find something that I thought would be appropriate for this ride, and I found the Planet Coaster archway support, which really brings to mind a Cobra, the way it's shaped, with the sort of wider, flatter head at the front, and then the curve going up to it. So I thought I could do something with these, and I ended up really liking them almost on their own. We've got some pillars that I'm going to place in here to join them so they can work as supports for the roof that we'll be adding in. But it's pretty much a 2-piece design, which is very unusual for me, but they just seem to fit really perfectly, and they also kind of match the fairly low budget feel of this park. Rather than theming and landscaping the whole ride, one of the things I really noticed looking at Belmont Park and Lake Compounce was that coaster-wise, I think there's a Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce, which has got lots of nature and rocks and stuff, but apart from that, most of the coasters are literally just coasters on some concrete or a bit of gravel, and the ride is what people are there for, and there's pretty much nothing in terms of theming there, which is kind of the antithesis of how we normally build on this channel. But if that is what is happening in real life, then I'm quite happy to follow it. So I just thought we'd use these sort of Cobra style supports as a bit of a motif and theming, but without going too crazy with anything else. We are going to do something with the ground though to increase the feeling of speed when people are on the ride, but we'll get to that in a second. We're just going to put on a simple corrugated roof here. These pieces are really nice. The way they're curved rather than straight just makes them look a bit more interesting than usual. And I'm just going to move these ones over here and get some flat ones to join them together so they fit over the whole of the station. Keep the operator dry and the riders dry before they get on the ride, although if they're in the queue and it's raining, they're just going to get wet. I love how it actually gets darker under here once you put the roof on. That's really cool. I'm going to use these pillars attached to the Cobra as well to cover up the entrance and exit gates. I'm not a fan of these. I don't know why you can't recolor them. That's really annoying. We'll cover those up mostly with these and then a few other pieces later. And then we'll get some lights in. So we're going to have some pretty simple round lights up in the ceiling. And then I'm going to use these resort light boxes and just change the color on them so we can get a solid strip light on both sides of the track, just to sort of enhance that 80s feel. And once those are in, we can start detailing. So I'm going to put some no entry signs next to the exit ramp here. Have one of those on either side. And then we're going to use the generic fence that we made way back in episode 1 and use that to keep the guests safe on the actual station platform itself. Again, this is something I'm seeing in the parts that we're basing this on. The stations are super simple, just like a roof. Sometimes it almost looks like a fabric roof, I think, and then just scaffolding and fencing and bits of metal to stop people falling off the sides, but no big theming or anything like that. Kind of an industrial look, which I like, so that comes together nicely. And then we're going to put some more of these Cobras in, but make them really big and have those at various points throughout the ride. I think the one at the end here in the Cobra Roll looks really good, and it gives people something to look at when they're on the ride as well. The more things that we have next to the track, then the greater the feeling of speed that the riders are going to have. We'll also replace all the concrete under the ride with some gravel and pebbles, so there's more of a texture there, which again will increase the sensation of speed. We need to delete some of the concrete that we added in order to enable us to do that. So we'll get a little border so it's not just up against the fence, and then we can delete the bits in the middle. And there we go, we start to get an intentional looking hole there, which we can then fill in using the terrain brush. So we're going to get the gravel and just completely fill this in, and then we'll use the pebbles to make some highlights as well, so it's not just all one texture. And you can see the gravel has much more texture than the concrete that it's replacing, which is going to make things much more interesting. Just a little bit more terrain brush to do down here, and that's all the gravel in. And then we can switch to the pebbles, turn the intensity and the size down, and just draw in a few patches of a slightly different material, keep it looking interesting and varied. That's looking a lot better already, but I think there's one more thing that we can add in here, which is still low budget, but which is going to perk things up a bit and provide more things for the riders to go past, and that's rocks. So we've got these big tropical rock boulders here. We'll just use this one boulder, spin it round, have more than one together, sink them down into the ground, etc. And this is just going to, again, just increase that sensation of speed as people go past these. And it still fits in with the whole low budget thing, I think. Don't think a large lump of rock is that expensive compared to hugely over the top theming and stuff like that. That's this part of it done. There's just one more thing that we need to do, and that's finish covering up these entrance gates. We're going to use one of the wall signs to do that. We've got this coaster themed one, which is appropriate. So we'll move this down and get it in front of the last exposed part of the entrance gate. Looks much better when you can't see that, but this is kind of big. It's going to impede people's progress as they exit the ride here. So what we'll do is just shrink it down a bit, see how small we can get it so that it still covers up that part of the entrance gate without getting in the way of the guests. And then once we've got it in position, we'll just change the color of the border. So we'll go with a dark gray, goes nicely with those columns. Let's take a look at that. Yep, happy with that. And that's everything done, our first modern coaster. Let's take a look at it in operation, and we'll also do a POV. Here we go, the ride is open, the guests are on their way. Once we've seen the cinematics of the Cobra in action, we'll also do a full POV so you can see how it rides. Here we go, this chain lift is insanely fast. I don't know how realistic that is, but it certainly launches them at speed when they get to the end of it. But I think it looks really cool, especially the Cobra Roll at the end here, which is the main feature of it. It does not last very long though, I think it's about 40 seconds. Which presumably is why the real ride goes backwards and then forwards to make it last a bit longer. But it's definitely a lot higher thrill than the Grand Dipper. And I think those rocks really work, especially when the car travels in between them. I think that's really exciting. And there you go. That's the Cobra. We will return to Lake Liberty next week when we are going to finish the park with a brand new flat ride from the new DLC and a whole load of detailing. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.